Hi guys, welcome to the next series for Thai Food Network. I would want to welcome Sanket, who is the moderator for the session, and he's also the founder of Urbanspice and an experienced foodpreneur. You would have obviously seen him in the earlier series that were hosted. He is currently doing an interesting hybrid FMCG model with what he calls an idiot-proof food solutions for the QSR industry, and is servicing for over more than 5 cities. His experience comes from being an expert food pop-up brand, and he has done more than 1,500 event days across 14 cities in India. So over to Sanket, and welcome our esteemed speakers also. Sanket, please take over.
Thanks, Trupti, for the kind introduction. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, entrepreneurs of all ages. Today, it's an honor to introduce my panelists for today. As the topic suggests, they are truly the sultans of our industry. Jaydeep, I would like to believe, is the Alexander of the food industry. He's on a mission to conquer the world with Rebel Foods, I would say. He's an engineer, MBA from INSEAD, an avid traveler, ex-McKinsey, returned to India in 2010, began his entrepreneurial journey by selling wraps in Pune under the brand name Faasos. And today, as we all know, Faasos has transitioned to Rebel Food, which umbrellas 15 plus brands across 4 countries through 350 plus touch points. Mr. Jaspal Sabhrawal is, I would say, one of India's most respected thought leaders in the food industry, who is always here to help food entrepreneurs. He's an MBA from McGill University. Jaspal has worked with Coca-Cola India for over 10 years in many leadership positions. Then he spent 11 years with Everstone Capital, where he was responsible for the consumption vertical. Jaspal still remains associated with Everstone as one of the fund advisors. And since 2017, he, along with his partners, have been building something very interesting called TagTaste. It's the world's first online platform that offers services like customized sensory reviews, new product development, and consistency tracking for menu items across 70 plus cities in India already. In a short span of time, they already have 120 plus brands as their clients. They also extend pro bono support to farmers and the government of India. Apart from cultivating TagTaste, very interestingly, Jaspal has also developed 100% plant-based patty for his pet dog Gobi. Now, moving to the Q&A, it becomes difficult to ask questions to a legend like you, Jaspal, but I will still give it a shot. So I always wanted to hear your views on this. So when Everstone bought Burger King to India, everybody thought it was a mistake because McDonald's and KFCs were already entrenched as mainline brands. Everstone proved everybody wrong by establishing one of India's fastest and successful debut. So what did you as Team Burger King do differently?
So first thing first, it took us almost like 7-8 years to get Burger King into India. First time we wrote to them, I think, was 2007, 2008. And at that time, India was not their focus market, but we kept trying. And it was only, after like 2012, early 2013, the discussions started. They kind of spoke to various people in the country. And since they are also owned by a very, very focused, very aggressive private equity fund from Brazil, but very active in North America, 3G Capital. So they had a very lofty picture of India, like 1.3 billion people, and you are only talking about 300 outlets in 5 years. Why can't you open 700 outlets? So long story short, we kind of shared with them our insights, our experiences, our successes, our misses, and signed the accord. But if you look at the landscape of QSRs, mainly McDonald's, KFC, and a host of very strong regional players, because you can't look at QSRs just from the global lenses, right? You have very strong Haldirams in north, you have Sarvana Bhavan, etc. in south. They had achieved a lot. In fact, the toughest period for QSRs with global heritage was 1998 to 2002. right? So they did the groundwork. So no shame in admitting. But the market was still very barren as far as the penetration was concerned. Secondly, in our thesis, it was very important to understand what would be the brand traction. So should you kind of bet on Carl's Jr., Wendy's, or Burger King? And we felt that after Starbucks, Burger King, from the mass perspective, I'm not talking niche here, was the last of America's brand to be entering India, in
Sure.
terms of aspirational value, connect, etc. So we were pretty sure. But then it again boils down to execution. How do you execute? Second part of your question. So there is nothing that you can get from like Burger King overseas, apart from very classical and very fine-tuned systems, processes, things like equipment, etc. They are like best in class, like any global player. But when it comes to menu development, there is nothing much that you get from global parents, because most of it is beef. At that time, beef was even more than what it is today. Today, chicken is picking up across the globe. So we were lucky again to be thinking it in a very logical manner, not in a very euphoric sort of manner. We managed to get a very competent leader for our business from the Burger King system, Raj Varman, who's been running Burger King right from the day one, and he joined very early. So there were like parallel forces we had to kind of devise and make them move in various sort of verticals. So starting from understanding Indian market, so we camped in 6 cities. We went to Ahmedabad, we went to Chennai, we ate in every nook and corner, because you can't apply self-reference to things that you kind of want to develop for a brand like Burger King. So we had McKinsey shadowing us in all these 6 cities, but we camped there for like days. We covered Calcutta, we covered Lucknow, we covered Amritsar, and of course Delhi, Chennai, and Mumbai. And it took us a lot of time in terms of understanding the flavor profile, pricing is a very important factor. How do you kind of build your portfolio ladder, value, core, premium, and how premium the premium thing should be. And that's where the Whopper came, and that's where the problem came, because Burger King US had never done Whopper outside of beef, and here we were insisting on doing Whopper in mutton, lamb, and vegetarian. So
Sure.
that took 2 months of convincing and follow up. But long story short, very simple process we followed, but things had to move in parallel. So it was a preparation time of almost 11 months, and in November of 2014 we launched Burger King. But the most important part was the real estate part, because when you are in this pandemic, real estate definition has changed. But back in the day, if you were launching a brand in India and you did not have access to good real estate, even best of brands did not have any chance of making it to the right level of traction that they deserve. So we had around 35 sites carved out in our first 11, 12 months of preparation, because of our relationships, understanding of market, and the huge portfolio Everstone usually operates with, different kind of investments in the food vertical. So I would say, if you assign weightage uh, towards like your run up to a good launch, number one was team, followed by product development, and then systems, processes, and lastly pricing. Marketing is, of course, when everything is bundled together, you have all the ducks in a row, you can always market that part. And we've been very cautious, although I'm not very actively involved first 3 years, I was very actively involved along with Raj. But Raj has very successfully led this business to a current store count of about 265. And the business has been at corporate EBITDA level positive for the past 2.5 years. Right now, the business would of course come under pressure because of the ongoing pandemic, but I'm sure we'll find and devise ways of getting out of it. So that in nutshell is how we've been running Burger King.
I hope everybody in the audience is going to make notes today. We're going to hear a lot of words of wisdom from Jaspal and Jaydeep. So, guys, please take a pen and paper and keep making notes of all of this. So, Jaydeep, moving on to you. So, there's a saying that behind every overnight success, there's night years of failure. I'm sure you might agree with this statement. You, in hindsight, pivoted beautifully from front-end QSRs to aggregation to dark kitchens to creating an umbrella of brands now. How does one, in your opinion, decide the right time to pivot? And how difficult is it to convince your partners, your investors at such times? And do you think the emotional baggage the entrepreneurs carry prevents them from the speed in taking difficult decisions?
Quite a bit of philosophy in that question, I guess, but I'll try to answer. So I think, for us, I don't think we've really pivoted from where we started, between where we started and where we are now. We still make the food ourselves and we still deliver, which was the premise on day one. But obviously, I would say there are two things largely that dictated all our sort of maneuvers over the years. So one is survival instinct. So, for example, around 2014, when we had about 50 outlets of Faasos, we realized that the real estate cost and finding locations on the high street, all these things are getting very, very tough. And obviously, we didn't have the backing of a well-established brand and so on and so forth. So we were fighting our own battles. So we were really in a survival mode, and we had to find something, out of that mess, which could keep us going. And we did a small survey of our customers, and we asked them one single question. During that time, also our outlets, we used to be like, 100, 200 square feet, no seating, 75, 80% delivery. So we asked our customers one single question, have you seen our outlets? Some 75% of our delivery customers said no. So it was like a moment of epiphany for us that, people are getting used to, like most things in life, travel, books, fashion, they're getting used to ordering food without actually visiting the outlet or seeing the outlet, as long as they trust where it is coming from. So that led to a decision of putting our first cloud kitchen in Marol in Mumbai. And we saw, the rent coming down, larger space, better working atmosphere. And things sort of started changing for us. So I would say that was the first, if you can call it a pivot, but it was pure sort of, survival instinct. And that started working for us. And then over time, we shuttered all our high street locations and moved to a completely kitchen model, which now is called cloud kitchen. Back then, it was just a kitchen for us. But so that was, I would say, the first sort of transformation in our business. The second transformation came around 2015, end of 16, and this time it was not survival instinct. This time it was recognizing an opportunity. So the opportunity was that now that we had these dark kitchens, it meant that there is no association between the brand and the real estate. Like if you walk into a Starbucks, you basically walk into not only the brand, but also the real estate associated with it. Like, similar to Burger King and McDonald's and so on. But in our case, that association was not there because we were operating out of a dark kitchen. So we saw an opportunity to start more brands from the same kitchen, because we didn't have that I would say, constraint of marrying the real estate with the brand. So that gave birth to actually our first brand outside of Faasos is no longer. And we never scaled it up beyond the first location. It was called Olive Trails. We just launched it in Dubai after 5 years. But our first brand to scale up in that model was Behrouz. And then over time, there were more brands that came about. And we sort of realized that, over time, what we had with us, what we call an operating system for launching and scaling food brands. This operating system has 4 components. One is footprint. Second is technology. Third is our culinary expertise. And fourth is supply chain. Now, when you have these 4 things coming together as a platform, you can actually launch and scale brands and keep doing it, almost forever. You can ride every food trend. You can capture every new opportunity. Sometimes these opportunities are seasonal. Like we have a brand now that is live only during Navratri, because during Navratri, nobody eats, a lot of our other popular dishes. So we thought, why not launch a Navratri dishes brand only for 9 days? And being a Bengali, I didn't have any appreciation of these things because we used to eat mutton during Durga Puja. But then when I realized, when we realized as a team that these are opportunities that are coming our way because of our model, we grabbed them. Obviously there were, hiccups along the way, and but largely this is how we traversed the last sort of 10 years.
Right. So, so some of your brands, like you mentioned, Behrouz Biryani is now counted as one of the most iconic brands in India. They've become household names. So, how much time does it take from ideation of a brand to market launch? And when do you sort of scale up the marketing dollars behind a brand?
Right. I think there are a lot of theories around which is a better model. Is QS like a high street QSR a better model, or a cloud kitchen is a better model? And the jury is still out on that. Nobody knows. There are benefits on both models. But to me, the biggest benefit that I've seen in a cloud kitchen model is that you don't have any risk of costly failure. Like, for example, you don't have to put up, a 2.5 crore edifice just to realize that you don't have customers or customers don't like your product. So once you move, the biggest advantage of cloud kitchen, and it has also disadvantages, but over time I realized the biggest advantage that we have is we can almost operate like a software product launch. So sure. we would launch a brand or a concept in one location and see customer feedback and unit economics. And it's not a matter of time, however long it takes. We don't scale the brand till it reaches a specific customer love metric and a specific unit economics metric. So which means that we never spend any money in scale up, putting up, new stores, real estate, marketing, before we are really sure whether the customers are loving it or not. But once we reach product market fit for a brand defined by customer love and unit economics, then we give our everything behind that brand, because we know we have a winner at our hands. It's almost like an incubation center for brands. So similarly, like for, so far we may have tried 20, 25 different concepts and brands, but only about 10 in India have gone to sort of scale stage, where we realize that there is customer love and there is unit economics, and we scale them. So Behrouz was one such example. It took us about a year to get to a product market fit, during which time we scaled up to only about 10 locations, if I remember correctly, back in 2016. But once we saw a solid proof of product market fit, we went all guns blazing, because we had sorted out, how to scale, how to make it consistently and fresh in every kitchen across India, and we just went behind it. So I think that has been the sort of the methodology that we kept following for all brands. Like then Oven Story came and a few others that came along the way. but the same method. And why I say it's not a matter of time, because some brands like Behrouz took a year to get to the sort of scale up decision. Everstone took 1.5 years. So and then there are brands which took much lesser time, and obviously we're getting a little better at it. We are nowhere close to perfection, but this is the model that I think is the biggest benefit that we have in our business. Yeah.
I think you're just being very humble by saying only 10 brands. I think scaling up 10 brands is no mean feat. Yeah. So moving on to Jaspal, you headed Coca-Cola's FBO business for many years. You've seen the beverage space very closely. What is your take on the ethnic and the healthier beverage brands of India? And what tips would you give to the D2C food brands in India?
Very interesting question, Sanket. If you look at the beverage landscape, not only in India but globally, the whole thing sometimes get into a sort of black box in terms of what should be the right starting point. Jaydeep rightly highlighted the importance of the operating system they follow, the product development process. But in beverages, even if you undertake a good product development sort of project and come out with a nice product which kind of meets a need state in the marketplace, there is no guarantee that you will be able to scale up. Why? So if you look at the whole beverage space domination by Coke and Pepsi in their own respective strongholds like Western Europe and of course North America, it started as a game of interesting hydration, and countries like India, even erstwhile sort of thumbs up parlay days or Campa Cola days, it was refreshment. It was never hydration, because India to date has never had any problem on the hydration front. Ki pani zyada piyo, pani kyun nahi peete, right? Never, which was actually a problem in the developed world. So they had to devise these models. So if you historically look at the 3A strategy, both the companies have followed, and that's where the entry barriers come up. It is basically availability, affordability, and acceptability. Acceptability is, of course, product should be good and marketed well, but affordability comes with scale. But let's go to availability. Now, distribution is huge, and back in the day, we were taught that Coke's availability should be within arm's reach of desire. So you shouldn't be asking a passerby on the roadside ki mujhe Coca-Cola kahan se milega. The board should be visible from a distance, and that three-pronged strategy has been executed over the past 100 or 120 years. Right? Coca-Cola recently celebrated its 134th anniversary, but really speaking, the scale-up started after World War II. Right? So distribution is a huge barrier. There are lots and lots of interesting products in the marketplace in India, and you will be surprised. Even Coke, Pepsi, they have very, very interesting products in their stable. But are they able to market that? Not at all. You go to Japan. Japan has over 1,000 very, very new age sort of SKUs and brands and flavors, and right from coffee to milk-based variants to fruit-based variants. So this cola dominance has kind of created strange kinds of barriers, and the two-tier system wherein there is concentrate side which kind of protects the whole execution piece by way of concentrate, training, development, equipment, and the bottling side which is very, very cost efficient, extremely focused on markets, packaging innovation, right? So I think more than the product development, like in food, we've seen a lot of channel disruption happening by way of delivery platforms. Beverage is still lagging, even for delivery players. Carrying a beverage, appropriate beverage. So they are doing a lot of interesting stuff. But if you look at purely the need state movement, so Indian market specifically is clearly moving away from refreshment to nourishment, right? So there is a very good demand building up, right? But unfortunately, I'll say that these brands or concepts struggle to attract right capital because distribution barriers are huge. You lose tons of money in the beginning itself, right? Brick and mortar is still the dominant distribution channel. You do get help from channels like Amazon and Flipkart here and there, but they can't single-handedly move the needle. I think models like what people like Jaydeep have carved out is something needed. And the last point is, which is very product centric. How do you deliver the product, right? At what temperature you deliver? The cold chain was built by Coke and Pepsi. I left in 2005, and it was very. I don't know what the figures are right now. So cold penetration was something that was built by these two companies. You were placing refrigerators on loan with Panwala to QSR brands. No one had to pay for a chest cooler or a refrigerator or a fountain machine, and that was reserved as like exclusive, for exclusive use of that outlet. So the industry has always been kind of erecting barriers, the two giants, I would say, right? And no shame in admitting facts are facts. We learned a lot. There are a lot of good parts about Coke and Pepsi, but QSR, for example, a QSR brand like McDonald's or Burger King or KFC, they are already tied up. So they are completely close to the idea of pairing their burger with something nicer. So it is assumed that this is actually the ground rules which we will have to abide by. So I think disruption is needed in terms of right capital, and product I don't think is an issue. There are very good products in the marketplace in India, but they don't see the right traction. And so infanticide is the highest in the beverage segment.
Okay. Right. So, so moving on to your company now. So your company TagTaste is working very closely with IGIB, where you combine genotype and phenotype data to help make right choices about food. So I think to put it in simpler words, studying the genetics and the external environment to help people make decisions about the choice of food. So could you elaborate more on this framework, and also could you tell us a little bit more about the TagTaste vision?
So honestly speaking, Sanket, our relationship with the IGIB, the origin of it was very fun oriented. It is becoming serious now. That's like an honest admission. The way it started was IGIB, for the knowledge of everybody, those who don't know, is an offshoot of CSIR. It stands for Institute of Genomics and Integrative Biology. They are the DNA keepers of our nation. You can call them. Comes under like works very closely with IGIB, works very closely with Health Ministry and Ministry of Science and Technology. It's headquartered out of Delhi. So our association with them started because they wanted to understand the genotype framework of super tasters. So the super taster validation that we do is oral. So we kind of it's a globally accepted sort of method wherein you test the sensitivity of your palate for basically 4 basic tastes. Umami we are yet to launch, khatta, namkeen, kadwa, or meetha, right? So these 4 basic tastes. For bitter taste, we use polythyrosyl strips, which is more like a chemistry lab strip. So you put it on your tongue and you get the you get some taste, and based on the intensity, we classify the person. But if someone is bullshitting us that he's not sensing any taste, but he's reporting that yes, मुझे जैसे हम बोलते हैं ना, ये पानी मीठा होता है, but how many of us are able to sense a normal water, spring water is meetha? Most of us are not able to, but super tasters are able to get a trace of sweetness when they drink flowing stream water, right? So if someone is bullshitting, we have no means of validating that. So what happens is these people are then, with their consent, we forward their names and consent to IG. So they take their saliva or blood sample as one is comfortable with. So the genotype framework that is kind of done by them validates, and that's what is called genotype. So what we do is phenotype, which is behavior. कि आपको ये चीज कितनी खट्टी लगी या मीठी लगी, right? What they do is your genotype, right? So if the genotype and phenotype matches, he's like the validated super taster. Now, super tasters are in huge demand, as far as like pharma industry is concerned, or infant food industry is concerned, where it is impossible to get feedback from, infant, but their thresholds are very low. But they don't help in businesses, normal businesses like Burger King or Behrouz Biryani, because their thresholds are very, very low. So anything normal salt or normal sweet would be perceived as or tasted as very high intensity salt or very high intensity this thing. So that's how our relationship started, because they wanted to find the correlation. So as things progressed, we came to kind of know about things like olfaction, and that's where I kind of started doing more research. So what's happening in olfaction is, so patients who are like susceptible to diseases like Alzheimer or Parkinson. So research has proven that by the age of 44, 45, right? And this has been done in like, there is no dispute around that research. It's been done by Japanese, Britishers, Americans, everybody's done that. So by the time you turn 44, 45, it is very much possible today to understand if I have any susceptibility in terms of falling prey to this disease when I turn 55 or early 60s, right? So what happens in that? So you basically give them certain aroma patches and ask them to smell those patches, right? And depending upon the intensity, now there is a clinical angle involved here, right? So if your olfaction mechanism is okay, but it is not only olfaction, because aroma is always memory, right? So taste is direct, aroma is always memory. So there are scents and smells that you haven't smelled. So if you are smelling it first time, you are registering it in your memory, right? It could be a pleasant smell, it could be not so pleasant smell. So there is a clinical angle involved, that whether a particular aroma, if I am subjecting a person to smell that aroma and is reporting an intensity, right? Does that intensity, matches with the clinical sort of input model, right? So we are developing that kit for India. So where is the challenge? The challenge is that you have to come up with about 28 to 43 different kinds of aromas to be able to predict, right, the susceptibility quotient for any normal human being at that early age. Now, aromas are different in different regions. So I may be familiar with lavender, but my other friend living in South may not be familiar with lavender. So you cannot create like regional sort of aromas, and it will become too complicated, right? Then you have to kind of tie it up with clinical this thing. So there's one aroma kit which is available, but that meets the requirements of not the whole of the US, but I would say mainly East Coast, So this is by University of Pennsylvania. It's called UPSID. It's, I think, available on Amazon as well. Fairly effective. But you go to California or West Coast or Midwest, people struggle to kind of cope up with those aromas because they are alien. So when I'm smelling something for the first time, I'm not familiar with the intensity spectrum of that. So this is something that we've taken it up on priority. As of last week, they've involved us in COVID-19 detection kit as well, wherein we are providing them with data. So,
Sure.
like COVID, what happens is again something that world quickly noticed based on their diagnosis of various COVID patients, that they, as soon as they kind of detected with the COVID-19 infection, their olfaction was coming under stress, right? And within olfaction, it was actually the flavor that was coming under stress. So aroma is what you smell through nose, and flavor is something that you experience inside your mouth, which is basically through your retronasal path. Our nerves are such that we smell food inside our mouth. So when taste combines with smell inside your mouth, it is called flavor. So that is a subject that we deal with on a everyday sort of basis. So we've been assigned with this task of sharing with them the data we have for various food categories, right? And show to them that if there is, let's say, smell of mint in a particular dish, right? How a normal taster or a super taster reports that mint flavor in his output report. If he's, for example, doing any sensory of a pudina chutney or kebab and chutney or some potato wafers with mint flavor. So we are sharing that data with them so that a base threshold for general population cluster in general is ascertained, and from that reference point you start measuring your patients whether he's kind of going down on his olfaction or kind of remaining the same. So this, they feel, would be an additional parameter apart from the thermal temperature check that they do. This will take about 2.5 3 months because you need data from various clusters across India. So they've identified close to 30 plus clusters. So this is work in progress. Serious work is yet to start on that front. So very frankly, it started like a fun relationship with them. We were always doing phenotype. We have no expertise, no desire of getting into labs or stuff like that. That's not our capability. We are very behavior oriented, wherein we kind of apply stats to behavior and come up with predictive analytics, and that's what we stick to. Coming to the last part of your previous question, TagTaste vision. See, the vision was very simple. We knew that we cannot be a platform between providers and seekers. There are enough and more number of platforms, right from Facebook to WhatsApp to Twitter. Seekers and providers are there. So it's like we are 20 years too late to be getting into that. So that's more like a Coke and Pepsi sort of model. So we obviously, and for any platform, you need seekers and providers. But what we did in our initial years of development was we thought we'll provide them with tools. So one such tool was Sensory. So Sensory in our case is very, very product specific, which slows us down. Biryani is different sensory framework. Pulao is a different sensory framework. Plain rice is a different sensory framework. So we give very, very sharp and precise input. So there are, in 65% of our new business, we don't have the forms ready. So when a new dish comes our way, our sensory research team, which is in-house, has to come up with a proper form, which is coded onto the app. You pre-test it. So we have that lag period. So the basic idea was that the privileges which were earlier only limited to large multinational companies, they always added, always, right? Whether they followed or they didn't follow is a different matter. Within the industry spectrums, if you see wine and liquor industry, tea industry, they followed sensory frameworks really, really well, right? So they have their own aroma spectrums. They have their own cascades. So we've been developing such cascades for every product that comes our way, right? So the idea was to kind of make these tools available to our seekers as well as providers, right? And then use the community of experts that we have on our platform, right? So today, for example, even for a large brand like Behrouz, they have a problem. They know that this problem can be fixed by this person, but there is the probability of solving culinary problem through a personality who's very well versed, very well experienced, would always be low. It's always like hit and trial. Such is the culinary sort of output management. So there is a limit, even for a company like Burger King or Behrouz or McDonald's, that how many experts you can hire. And smaller companies, hit a sort of T point when they kind of sign up with an expert with all the good intent, but the delivery is not good, right? So most of our failures, both in the packaged food side as well as the restaurant side, right? We often attribute it to कि real estate महंगी है, we don't get the trained manpower. But in reality, when you do the sensory, right, 60% plus people do not have the right food that they can put on the table, right? So we wanted to make these tools available to all our startups, all large, small companies, farmers. If farmer is kind of, so we get a lot of farmers. He's growing an organic sort of produce, but the customer says, "यार मुझे तो taste में कुछ पता नहीं लगा," right? So we try our best to first understand those categories and try our best to bring out the goodness, because a good organic product would definitely kind of show a very fine differentiation in taste, aroma, etc. Because it's not organic by seed; it is organic by soil. 3 layers of soil, when they interact and the crop or produce grows, you definitely get the right sort of sensory profile. The challenge for people like us is to first understand the category and devise the mechanism which helps us in extracting feedback out of consumers and then training consumers. So how do you train a consumer between aroma and aromatics? How do you train people that what is retronasal and what is orthonasal? So we have been devising these kits. So for example, one of our most commonly followed example is that if I blindfold you and if I kind of hold your nose with a clip and I make you taste a crispy apple and then a crispy onion, they would taste the same.
Oh, is it?
What I've done is, yeah. So what I've done is the basic taste is same, but what I've done is I've blocked your aroma, right? I'm holding your nose,
Sure.
right? So I'm blindfolding you so that you don't get biased.
Got it.
So, this is the game of gastrophysics. So we do these exercises when we train our consumers, because theory would go well with a very small percentage of our population. But practical examples, when you kind of offer to them live, how do you, for example, we talk about umami. So how do you describe umami? What are the 3 markers of describing umami, right? So we try to handle these things. So that was basically the objective behind starting TagTaste. And much of it kind of I learned from my own failures during my Coke never gave you such opportunities. Coke gave you opportunities of marketplace, production efficiencies, etc., etc. There is no, at least till the time we were there was hardly any new product development. Incremental improvements were of course there. You can't touch Coke, you can't touch Fanta. But when you are like in a private equity space or space where people like Jaydeep are kind of building a very new industry, there you have a lot to innovate. And if you have right source of capital, right minds, right tools, right, and tools which are not obscenely expensive or out of reach, So today, for example, to our normal startup, since your previous question was on beverages, so there is a beverage company from Delhi, founded by an ex-IITian and ex-Unilever guy, Deepak Agarwal, Auric. So we got him support of chefs like Chef Manjeet Gill, corporate chef of ITC, no charge. So all unfunded, sorted out, where idea is sorted out, because end of the day, we also have to make a living. So any startup which has an idea which is sorted out, to the basic level, we don't charge anything. So Deepak, we've been supporting for the past 2.5 years, and he gets best of support. A support a Nestle guy would get, or a Pepsi guy would get. And then we have tie-ups with institutes like IHM Pusa, IHM Dadar, NIFTM in Sonipat. So they get access to their labs. Right? So any test, etc., stability test, or any type of chromatography, they don't pay anything. Right?
I think that's some great work that TagTaste is doing, and I think sooner than later, I think a lot of food businesses can really take advantage of TagTaste, and it's interesting to know that farmers are using your facilities, which is amazing to
So organic, all the farmers who are honest, because they feel very frustrated. Even access to 5-star hotels. First you come from, let's say in Delhi, you are coming from Haryana, Punjab, or Eastern UP. You come and the environments are so intimidating. It's a fact. And chefs are always busy because it's a 24/7 customer service oriented business. The poor guy is kind of starting his day going to a mandir, because we pray to get such honorable sort of businesses. In 60-70% of the cases, the main chef is never able to meet them because he's busy sorting it out. His other priorities and other customers. Some junior person comes, take the sample, whether that sample is tested, not tested, no one knows. We take charge of that sample and make sure, because we have like this report we generated with the help of professional consulting organizations like Wazir, but also IFCA, right, which is a chef, Indian Federation of Culinary Association, which is the apex chef body, World Association of Chefs. So that's where you kind of, have collaborative loops. HPMF, Hospitality Purchase Managers Forum, 22,000 purchase managers are members of that. So if, let's say you are a farmer, you have a product which kind of delivers sensory analytics of X plus, which is considered, let's say, very, very good. So all these 22,000 purchase managers in the months to come would have access to that information, right? Sure. Now, whether he wants to buy that, doesn't want to buy that, that still is his prerogative. But the farmer won't have to struggle. And those reviews are done by IFCA chefs and normal consumers. IFCA is an association, it's not for profit. So their reviews are, and all professional chefs, whether you are with Oberoi, Imperial, ITC, they can participate because you are helping the community. So it's not like a biased paid review, not at all. Nothing is anonymous in such things. So it's like complete transparency, right? So this is what we wanted to create. We have our own challenges, as I said. Every farm is like a piece of real estate. You first acquire the plot, build the real estate, wait for it to kind of stabilize before you take it to the market. Sorry, I took a little long, but I just wanted to reach out to your community. If there are people who are sorted out in terms of their base idea, we would be very happy to help them.
I think that was very informative and deep. So, so Jaydeep, moving on from the very serious, deep work that we just heard from Jaspal. So you have 15 plus brands now. You've scaled up 10 plus, like you mentioned. So is there some thought on the mix of brands you've chosen? So are there any boxes that you take, like high value, high volume, low value, high volume? Have you seen a shift in the Indian consumer appetite? And on your pricing and menu strategies, so are they more central or are they very regional? If you could like throw some light on this.
So I think, rightly or wrongly, we use a lot of 2x2s in our decision making at Rebel. So then the first 2x2 we pass our decision through is, if you think about customer food missions, if you can visualize the y-axis as single serve and group serve, and x-axis as um, regular and indulgence, then you get 4 boxes. So regular and single serve, right? Or group serve and indulgence. So most food missions we realized actually reside in one of these boxes. Like for example, your Wednesday work lunch is single serve and regular, but your Saturday when friends are over at your place, then it's indulgence and group. So when you order, snacks for the office in the evening, it's group and regular, and so on. So when you want to have a, nasi goreng one, Saturday evening, that's single serve but indulgence. So we try to occupy these boxes from the same sort of platform, infrastructure, footprint, and so on and so forth. So over time, our thought has been to create brands occupying these boxes. So Behrouz occupies group serve and indulgence, while Lunchbox occupies single serve and value or regular. So that's the first lens we look at before thinking of any product or any new concept. That where does it fit? That decides its its profile, its serving size, its pricing, and so on. But we put another lens on top of it, which is another 2x2, which is market size and extent of fragmentation. So if a category is very big market and very, very fragmented, like biryani or Chinese, you don't have a national player, right? And while on the other side, burgers is oligopolistic. It's not fragmented. So there are 3-4 big brands, even if the market size is high. So we make our decision, in oligopolistic markets, which even if it's a market size very high, it doesn't make sense for us to get into that market, unless we have the cap. As Jaspal was saying, we would be taking on Coke and Pepsi. What's the that would be obviously at some point in time we would try that as well. But right now, we sort of prioritized categories which are large in size or growing in size, but very fragmented. So that is, biryani, Chinese, fast food, in terms of North Indian meals, South Indian meals, health, and so on and so forth. So that's where we are focusing. But again, within each category, we also go back to our first metric and see, like for example, biryani. We have Behrouz, but we also have another biryani brand. Not many people know, but that biryani brand is a very single serve value offering, which sits in the value and regular and single serve category. So that's how we make decisions that which markets to enter depending on the market structure and what customer mission to address through that brand. So that these two things put together sort of tell us, what's to take up next.
Interesting. So speaking of brands, I think you very recently came out with DIY kits, I believe. So I'm assuming it must have sprung out of the need of the COVID-19 situation. So is it like your foray into FMCG, or is it still in the QSR, the cloud kitchen segment itself?
So if as I was saying before, our company is an operating system, so which is culinary technology, footprint, and supply chain. Now on top of that, we had one brand, 6 years back. Then we had 2, then 3, then 4, then 7, and so on. So we are always open to ideas that can fit into this operating system. Now, obviously, the markets move, consumer behavior changes depending on black swan events like this pandemic, or even otherwise. Things change, like plant-based meat. It's a long-term trend. While the COVID has probably created some very short-term trends. People who never entered a kitchen are trying to cook for themselves. So we sort of pick up a few trends that we believe would be there for a long time and fits into our operating system. And based on that, we decided that there are a few use cases. So we think about this as dining table to kitchen. So there are a few use cases that are sort of overlapping between dining table and the kitchen. Like, for example, DIY meal kits is one such use case where people who never had the knowledge or expertise to cook, but at the same time they're worried about ordering from outside and so on and so forth. DIY kit fits beautifully, somewhere in the middle. And there could be more, like marinated meat that you just put in a griller, or ready to cook sauce that you put in your chicken, and it creates a chicken tikka masala or something like that. So these are some of the ideas we are toying with, and not that everything. And these are ideas that fit into our operating system, right? So they can be distributed across our 350 kitchens in India, across 35 cities, can ride on our supply chain, and so on. But we also realize that we may not be able to do everything ourselves, which is why we just about 2 weeks back we started a program where we are seeking people with such ideas and product market fit already established. Those ideas can ride on this platform and can get to 35 cities, and then the one great outcome of our operating system is we are always within 30 minutes of any customer in these 35 cities. So if you can place a product within 30 minutes of customers' reach, and it can be delivered quickly, tastes great, solves a big mission, then we are willing to take it up. So that's how we sort of think about it. Always thinking from an operating system perspective and seeing in what opportunities emerging in the broader world, and sort of trying to marry the two things.
Sure. Yeah, I think the 3 A's that Jaspal spoke about, I think you all have beautifully touched upon all those 3 A's. Accessibility and availability of your brands is I think literally at arm's length. You've repeatedly mentioned supply chain to be one of your 4 pillars in your business model. So how do you maintain the supply chain? It's really robust, I believe. So is it internal, or do you depend on a lot of third-party logistics?
It's a mix of third party and internal. We have our own commissaries, but at the same time, we also work with some of the experts in this business for specific materials. We work with probably the same vendors that, let's say, a McDonald's or a Domino's or a Burger King would work with. Quite a few vendors are in fact common in our supply chain with these guys. Now we are at a volume when we can work with these guys, and also we pose interesting problems, like because we never use any artificial colors, additives, stabilizers, and so on and so forth in our food ever. So we actually created some of these things from scratch. Like, I think these sort of developments have happened in burgers and pizzas more because of the multinationals, but it hasn't happened in, let's say, for example, a biryani or a curry or a Chinese sauce. Some of those things we've done with our partners for the first time. And so I would say it's a combination of age-old processes, but with the value system of no preservatives, no artificial color added, etc. Where we tend to believe that we brought something to the table in terms of scaling up something like that, and together we built it. So I would say today we can operate any part of the country, from Srinagar to Kanyakumari, where our supply chain can take any material from any corner of the country to another. And it also matters because, for example, paneer or mutton, they are not available across India. They're available in great quality only in certain parts of India.
Sure.
If you don't have a supply chain that's sort of stitches up all your network, you would be you won't be able to serve the same great quality paneer or mutton to everybody across the country. You would have to rely on what's next door, and that may not be the same consistency or quality across the board.
For sure.
And in India, the local farming infrastructure is not as developed as some of the other countries like US and so on. So hence the role of supply chain is a stitched up supply chain is even bigger in India. So yeah, so that's how we are thinking about it.
Very interesting. So, how much importance do you give to kitchen automation to take care of your food standardization?
A lot. So that I would say is, as I said, out of the 4 pillars, one is technology, and for a lot of people, technology is a piece of software or an app. But in our case, technology is both hardware and software. So we built connected machines for and with our partners. We have a industrial engineering and design lab in-house, which has chefs, a couple of robotics people, automation engineers. And we formed this group about 2.5, 3 years back. And over time, we worked with a few other partners as well. And we attacked problem after problem over the last 3 years. Like, for example, one big problem is cooking an Indian gravy or a Chinese gravy, right? So for a burger or a pizza, it's easy, but you don't need skill. But apparently it takes 15 years for a Chinese cook to develop the right muscles to move that, to do that tossing movement in a particular way.
Yeah. Yes.
The wok, right? Obviously that's not scalable. But at the same time, we don't want to make things in one place, fill it with preservatives and additives and then ship it to all parts of the country. So the problem statement for us is, how can we make things fresh, but still not dependent on a 15-year knowledge base or a skill? So that's a hard challenge. And then the only way you can solve it is through intelligent automation. So for example, we built an auto wok where the recipes are inbuilt, can be fed through over the air. So right now, sitting in Bombay, we can tweak a recipe, let's say in Jakarta, in one of our kitchens. And then the wok, and then the person who is operating that wok would follow the instructions that the machine or the app, tagged to the machine is telling him. So launching new products, launching new recipes, etc., become really seamless for us. And there are many other pieces that we did, like a fryer, like we, in Burger King, McDonald's, you will see these large fryers, which is terrific, which create, French fries with the same consistency every single time. Sure. But it cannot fry a falafel or a samosa. But in our case, we would need to make 100 different fries. So we created a intelligent fryer contraption, which when you tell him what to fry, it sets the temperature of the oil, goes down automatically, comes up automatically without anyone remembering whether he needs to do it for 1.5 minutes or 30 seconds or at what temperature, etc., etc. So, and again, all these recipes can be fed through the internet. Like if you want to launch a new fried dish, we would launch a new setting. We would pass a new setting through IoT to this device, and the guy operating this machine has to just select what he or she is cooking. So there's several others. I mean, I can keep. This is my favorite subject out of everything, so I can keep on going. But yeah, so because multi-brand kitchen is a concept that was not there, and we didn't have ready-made machines to help us. So obviously we had to invent some of these things. Obviously working with quite a few external partners as well. Yeah, so that's the work we've been doing, and that's our technology. The technology element of the operating system. So tomorrow we want to launch a fried snack, which you want to scale up across 35 cities. We have the infrastructure, and we don't have to, create a new SOP, train some new people, bring skill to scale up that fried snack brand. We just set the machine accordingly, and it can be scaled up overnight. So that's the technology element in our platform.
So much of use of instrumentation engineering in a kitchen can only be spearheaded by an ex-McKinsey who is an engineer. So very interesting to hear on the kind of automation you've done in the kitchen. So,
Thank you.
Jaspal, so I in fact was reading on your TagTaste app that the the percentage of people eating plant-based meat has increased by 454% in US, while only 100% people 100% increment has happened in the meat segment. While interestingly, there's a 4,000% jump in vegetarians. So, what is your take on your plant-based meat in India? And do you think we do justice to the number of vegetarians in India with the choice and style of veg food we offer them?
So interesting point you made, Sanket. What happens is anything that comes our way from the US, we take that as a trend to follow, right? Whether it's fashion, food, etc. But in this case, India is little different. So last year, I think in the month of September, October, just before the World Chef Conference, we, along with the Indian Federation of Culinary Association, decided to conduct a survey of urban India in terms of how many vegetarians we have, right? And those who are, classical non-vegetarians, how often they eat non-vegetarian. Because we didn't have, good fix on the degree of vegetarianism in India. We couldn't do semi-urban, rural because of cost and time constraints. But here is what we found. So 38% people in India are urban India are vegetarians, right?
Okay.
And within that, if you see the feasting and fasting behavior, I like the point Jaydeep made in his earlier narrative about Navratra, this thing. So, the religion is a huge sector in India. We'll come to that in a moment. So 22% people in India fast at least once in a year. And that fasting is not like कि आपने दोपहर को कुछ खा लिया. This fasting is at least 9 to 10 hours. So we in our questionnaire had 10 hours. So no water, no nothing. So usme we obviously have our Muslim brothers and sisters, doing Ramadan or Ramzan fasting, and then Tuesday fasting. Some people do Thursday fasting. It's huge. Now, mirror that on the drivers that propelled the Western markets to go for plant-based substitutes, as we call them, plant analogs, right?
Sure.
So they were primarily a beef eating sort of culture. And if you look at their drivers to turn vegans or vegetarians, it's not animal welfare as the top reason. The top reason is environment, right? So the amount of water and pressure that cultivating a beef would involve doesn't really warrant that world should keep on consuming beef, right? So their problems were very different. So they are right now not only doing a lot of work on the plant analogs, but if you look at the agencies like United Nations Sustainable Development Program, lots and lots of NGOs, people like Good Food International, GFI, right? They've been kind of requesting or prompting people to have meat-free Monday or meat-free Friday, etc., etc. हमारे तो ये culture में ही है, people fast, and people who are non-vegetarian by claim, right? Not all of them are eating non-vegetarian every day, right? And there are reasons. Because we have a very good interface with plant as well as animal-based food. And the second reason is that proteins in India are expensive. Both the veg concentrated proteins, animal proteins are also expensive. So in most households, the day you cook your poultry or meat or any such thing, aquatic food, it's usually when the whole family is together. Sunday you have mutton curry or butter chicken, etc., etc. Right? So which kind of reduces the pressure. Now there is an absolute pressure because we are a country of 1.3 billion people. But if you look at per capita consumption, we are not at all contributing to the extent even mid-sized countries are contributing. Now we are 38% vegetarian, which is the second country in terms of degree of vegetarianism. 13% Israel. Then comes Taiwan, and US is just about 2.5-3%, right? So we have to filter these things when we analyze such behavior. So what happens is when you have a culture where one or more than one meal are like laden with some variety of meat, either beef or pork or chicken, right, or even eggs, right? So your palates are kind of conditioned for that kind of food, right? So the need for plant substitution becomes very, very important for those cultures. Because otherwise, you won't get hooked to भाई आप जब भिंडी खाई नहीं कभी तो आप अचानक इन्वायरमेंट के चक्कर में एक दिन खा लेंगे, 2 दिन खा लेंगे, but you won't change your intrinsic food habits. Luckily, in India, we don't have such issues. So when I eat bhindi for the pleasure of it.
Sure.
Right? I don't want my bhindi to be laden with some heme enzyme and it's giving me meaty texture. No, not at all. Not at all. Right? You look at the dairy. So dairy is a fantastic example. Before COVID-19, right, the per capita dairy consumption of an average animal dairy consumption kind of reached 40-year low. 40-year low, right? Came COVID-19 because they were all shifting to nut-based milk. Came COVID-19, right? Everybody kind of now you have better surety of immunity building properties in animal based protein. These are interesting things. They do have niches. For example, oat milk has done exceedingly well, and it's boosted further when Starbucks decides to give you that option of oat milk as well as dairy milk. It's a huge push, right? So that's how Western economies have always operated. So the shift out there is from industrialization of domestic animals, which was the case until 2007, 2008. You had these huge beef lots were cultivating like 1 million cattle heads or pork heads. You have like 3-4 million chickens being processed by the likes of Tyson, Cargill, etc., etc. Now they are slowly moving towards industrialization of microorganisms, right? So which is what is called, and heme is one magic enzyme which kind of helps them in oxidative chemical sort of transformation of the substrate. So if, for example, you want jackfruit to taste even more like meat, you kind of allow it to react with the heme enzyme, and it gives you that texture and flavor. So luckily the technology is there. We feel we could be wrong based on the current assessment of ethnography data, which is what we do for living. uh, 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 India market is not yet ready for any plant because there is no need for that. But yes, there are sections of our society which are experimental, high-end millennials or people who have studied abroad, spent a lot of time outside, so their palates have kind of not necessarily remained Indian or Indian regional. So they must be provided with such options. But in terms of your weight, Sanket, we don't see any traction building. I'm not even getting into price points at this stage. That's
Sure.
also very, 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 very important. But yes, it's a noble product because if any product that takes people away from categories which are devastating for your health or environment should be welcome, whether they are 1%, 2%, 5%,
Sure.
right? Why not? So but In general, the Western world, because they understand the longer term aspects of these things better than us. So the move is clearly towards domestication of micro organisms.
Sure.
Clearly, so how many of us, for example, know that like we have Android and iOS telephones or operating systems, you also have Android and iOS in chickens. The mother line of these chickens that we eat, whether you are eating at Burger King or as long as you are not like buying an heirloom or wet market chicken, which is a very tiny fraction of our market, right? So all your chicken is controlled by the mother lines owned by large Ross and Cobb and Tyson people. So they are used to this system. So they would do everything possible to kind of, which is, I won't call it unethical practice. It's a very proactive approach, and the current approach is much better than domestication of animals. Sorry, industrialization of domestic animals.
Sure.
Much better because you are not slaughtering your animal welfare. This thing goes up, right? Quotient goes up. It's nice, but at the base of it, it's right now very American, possibly Occidental Europe, but likelihood of it coming to India, it will happen, definitely happen. But if you look at that data set, I would say right now 0.3 to 0.4% Indians genuinely need it because they
Okay.
don't have so-called domestic Indian palate. They genuinely need it. So sure, from that perspective, we welcome any collaboration that comes our way. As I said, we are not enzymatic experts, but we have like partners in universities and scientists, food technologists who kind of. But we do try to kind of provide them with actual plant based uh, sensory data, wherein that jackfruit, when consumed cooked in a certain way and consumed at a certain temperature, etc., can give you a feel of meat. Likewise, jam. And I'm told we are very new to this field, but I'm told that there are programs and recipes in various tribal areas of India. We are yet to test that, but there is innovation on the plant side as well. So that's broadly our Sanket view on these things.
Got it. Got it. So, Jaydeep, this is more a comment rather than a question. So, we heard a lot of unicorns and unicorns firing left, right, and center in the last couple of months. But we've not heard anything from the rebel camp. I think kudos to you for keeping the team very lean. So you were very pandemic ready, I would say. So my question actually is: so do you have IPO plans?
I guess every company has an IPO plan at some point in time.
Right.
On the people side, we consciously stay away from the unicorn jargons because that just puts unnecessary limelight on us and distracts us from doing what we have to do to create a sustainable company that we are all proud of. So we've never overhired, so that may be the reason we never had to do any layoff. Also, we have probably industry's lowest attrition ever. Like our senior management has been here, the Execom has been here for 8 years plus. So in some sense, we are not a lot of the slash and burn unicorns. I mean, that's our DNA. There's nothing wrong or right about it. That's how it. And the reason I say that is we think about IPO exactly the same manner. So we probably are not gunning for unsustainable valuation and going for glory within the next couple of years or anything like that. We are building this business as solidly as we can. Obviously, there are many mistakes we make along the way. But our hope is that we would organically become an IPO candidate in a few years. And at that time we would decide uh, whether to go public or not, depending on external circumstances and so on. So we don't want to sort of force fit an IPO on our fate, I would say. We just love the journey, so, and we keep doing that.
So I think in your last narrative, you briefly mentioned about your launcher program, and in fact, so I didn't know before I had spoken to you last week that Slay Coffee is a brand that you actually incubated and kind of funded. So would you want to put some more light on your launcher program 2.0? And I would also like to further mention that I think the Thai Food Network would be very happy to work with your team in shortlisting startups or food companies, which would fall in your box of requirements if it makes sense to you.
Sure. So so Slay was so about a year back. We, from this same philosophy that we have the operating system. So like you can build an app on an Android or an iOS. So similarly, other people, other food entrepreneurs can build their brands on our operating system. So it started with that thought that if we open up our network and supply chain technology and culinary to other food entrepreneurs, can we make it work? Because that's very powerful. Then it is not restricted to our own abilities. And food is a very, I would say, the best food brands, and the food is the only consumer category where you can build a brand even within one location, because it's the most differentiated consumer product in the world, and it needs passion and and patience and so on and so forth, which only an entrepreneur has in abundance. Rest everybody is sort of fly by the night operator, and they move on from one thing to other. But an entrepreneur, when he works on a food business, he or she gives his everything towards that. And we wanted to harness that that power. So that's why we started about a year back this launcher program. And Slay was our first company. They had one outlet in Bangalore, but over the last 9 months, they scaled on our operating system. They are now about 100 locations.
Wow.
And doing tremendously well. Again, coming from the entrepreneur and the team, their passion about coffee, their understanding about coffee, and so on and so forth. So it's so that's how we built it. And along the way, about 6-7 months back, when we saw great traction and we saw tremendous product market fit, customer love, and all the good things, we decided to also invest in them. So we over time we invested about 25 crores in that company, which is big money for our company, because we are also a startup. But so we've now opened it up more now that we've tasted some success and we see that this can work. So we opened the platform up now, and we encourage entrepreneurs. I think there are two basic criteria through which we are looking at this. So one is, it has to the brand has to sort of follow our philosophy, which we call Eat Sure, which means no preservatives, no artificial color, no flavor, nothing unhealthy, great hygiene. All these things have to be maintained right from sourcing to customer. So that's criteria number one. But that's a gating criteria. If a brand doesn't follow these principles, then I don't think we are the right partners, because this pressure would be there from day one. The second criteria is across the dining table and the kitchen. So it could be a ready to cook curry paste, or a snack, or a Chinese snacks brand like a Momo brand, or a donut brand, or anything like that. Basically, the idea is customer love and usefulness across different customer missions. So anybody who fits these two, and obviously we are not a accelerator, or we are not Y Combinator. So we are not looking for people with a PowerPoint presentation. We are looking for people with a real product, which has got product market fit, where we can come in and give distribution, pan-India distribution on our operating system, That's where we come in. So yeah, so that's and we were like really surprised to see the response to my one LinkedIn post about this about 2 weeks back, and we over the last 2 weeks we spoke to terrific entrepreneurs with game-changing products, I believe, and hopefully some of those partnerships come along and we take it from there.
Great.
That's a very superb initiative that you've taken to kind of incubate and let other startups also grow in the food system. And I think you underestimated your own network effects if you thought your LinkedIn post would not go viral. Yeah. So taking further your thought on eat sure and very healthy food, I think I think Jaspal himself is a very big believer in in healthy food. He's a big believer of science meets art. He's convinced. I know for a fact that he's convinced some national brands to mention the bioactive compound percentage on their product packaging, which is a very positive and welcome move. So with this, I would, so Jaspal and TagTaste have drafted a COVID-19 survival planning report, and it's been very nice of them to launch it on the TiE Mumbai platform today and make it available free for all of us present here. So Jaspal, I would want you to kind of e-launch the report and tell us a little bit about it. And Rahul, if you could share it on your screen, please.
So this is basically an attempt to size up the situation we are in. On an ongoing basis, we publish any meaningful data point that we come across. We have 23 active ethnographers across India. And those of you who might not be familiar with what ethnography is, we, as far as possible, don't follow AC, Nielsen, or conventional research kind of methodology. We study behavior, actual market behavior, and sometimes to validate that behavior, we might go for validation by surveys, because certain decisions can't be based on behavior. To give you a very quick example of ethnography, so let's say Starbucks wanted to know how much sugar a cappuccino drinker is kind of mixing or consuming, right? So one very linear way of getting that answer is ask people, right? But how many people understand grammage, that each sachet is 5 grams? And we don't understand grammage. We don't need to. Food is fun, as Jaydeep directly indirectly mentioned. It's a complex subject to execute, but for consumers it's fun, right? From satiation to pleasure, it's fun. So you can't jumble up the entire thing with numbers and technical terms. So ethnography, instead of asking a consumer, you kind of get into a mechanism wherein every cappuccino cup you place 2 sachets of sugar, and when the product is consumed, when you get the cup back to the kitchen sink or pantry, you measure the amount of sugar consumed. That's actual. So that's ethnography. So we follow ethnography across India to the extent we can. We are a very small, tiny startup, and we share. Research is something we don't sell, because when you sell research, then it becomes property of the particular brand that has sponsored it. So whether you are PepsiCo, Burger King, Haldiram, so research is completely, it's our raw material. We invest in that. We use that raw material for our product developers, for fine tuning insights, for developing futuristic sort of models out of that. So very happy to share this report, as well as those of you who are knowledge seekers are most welcome to. We are still in app beta stage, but the platform is open for anyone. No conditions, no fee, no nothing. those who are knowledge seekers, right? So in this report, what we have done is we've sized up the situation in terms of some very basic pandemic fear factors, and this has more focus on in the beginning, more focus on the restaurant industry, and then it becomes very general. So what are those factors? Most of us are aware about that. And then we've looked at bounce back assumptions, because this is reality. Sooner, hope or prayer cannot be our strategy in this. We are in it for fairly longer term. It's a 2.5-3 year kind of bounce back story. So there are some bounce back assumptions. Earlier during our conversation, I highlighted the point again made by Jaydeep about festivals. So I'm talking about positive. So we are in a situation, call it a jam, call it a reset opportunity, call it an opportunity to legitimize our failures and kind of move on. So a lot of people in the restaurant industry are getting exit because they couldn't tell the community that I'm not doing well. So there was reluctance to shut down. That's very classical entrepreneurship. So nature has its own ways of balance.
Jaspal, my apologies. I'll have to interrupt you for a minute. So
Sure.
actually, Jaydeep just messaging me. So I think he has some commitment, so he needs to leave. So Jaydeep, just give me a minute. So there is someone from the government of Maharashtra who joined us, Hiten, who in fact you have also worked very closely with to give the meals. So Naveen, if you can take over for a minute, and if you can, and Rahul, if you can get Hiten also on the speaker panel, if we can thank Jaydeep and Hiten for the meals they have provided to the migrants.
Yeah, sure. Just a second.
Yeah.
So I don't think Hiten has logged in. I can't find him.
I
yet.
think Trupti will.
Hiten is there.
I am.
Hiten, can you
Hi,
hear
Rahul.
us?
Hello, everyone. Yeah. Am I audible?
Yeah, you're
Am I
audible.
audible?
Yes.
Yes, Hiten,
Yes,
you're audible.
yes, Hiten, go ahead. Is Naveen there? Rahul, I think you need to unmute Naveen.
Yeah.
Naveen, over to you.
Okay, thanks. Nothing. Just a quick one, folks. I know all of you founders would like to hear this, but I'd like to thank Hiten and Maharashtra Innovation Society and Jaydeep from Faasos and Rebel Foods. I think let's not lose the fact that these guys are on the front end of this current situation and they've been helping each and every one. In fact, the number of meals that Jaydeep has been providing is just not countable, and let's not even put a number to it. It's the deed that counts. And Hiten, can you please take our heartfelt gratitude to your team and to Mithun and all of them who have been like tirelessly working. I know all of you have actually, folks, Hiten and all of them, frankly, do work for the Startup India part of Maharashtra government's thing, which I think from the last 2 months they've stopped. They've all been frontline folks now at the hospitals, at various wards, providing food, shelter, clothing, whatever they can. They've been kind of helping. So Jaydeep and Hiten, I think all of us would like to thank you. So folks, use the web chat to kind of say a thank you to them. And Jaydeep, kudos to you, man. I think all entrepreneurs need to give back to society at some stage, and you have set an example for that. Thank you very much.
Great.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Really.
All community who have stepped forward and supported for this cause. We just created a platform where we knew the demand was driving from, and the people in the community stepped forward and started fulfilling those demands. So we started from a single project for getting something to JJ Hospital, and then we merged out to be everywhere in Maharashtra to support right from medical equipments to food. But it wouldn't have been possible without the people right now who are even listening to this. It was the community that came forward and supported us. And I really thank you, everyone, for supporting, especially Jaydeep. Nishant was coordinating with me on the project, and he did a very helpful job to us. Thank you for those things.
Thanks a lot, folks. Thanks a lot. And thank you to each one of you entrepreneurs over here on the TiE Food Network, because I know the very fact that TiE Food Network kind of got created and restarted was during the COVID times. And what brought us all together was not business, but the current situation. And now the current situation is now going to take us forward with interesting business. And thanks to Jaspal, who's been giving us great inputs. And I think we'll go back to his presentation now, but we need a mentor like you, sir, to help us all and make this market grow. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Hitain, for taking out time. I know it's your time to be on the field with the with the delivery that's going to happen to the migrants right now. I mean, I've worked with Hitain on a couple of projects, and I think the work that he's doing is splendid.
And also, Sanket, thanks to you, I think you also provided some X number of meals free from your company, so which I think is also being delivered today, right?
So Sanket did a fabulous job while supporting us with close to 30,000 meals. Then we just discussed it, and we were ready from his end. So thank you so much, Sanket.
Thanks, Hitain. I mean, whatever we can do, yeah, whatever little we can do. Thank you. Yep. And I think Jaydeep will need to leave as well. So Jaydeep, thanks a lot for taking out your time. We will stay in touch. We will get in touch with your spoke who takes care of the Rebel Launcher program. I mean, if we can do anything around that for you.
It's a launcher@rebelfoods.com. So anyone can send an email. There are people watching it every minute. So.
Super. And thanks so much for all your inputs. And
thank you, guys.
Hope to see you supporting TiE Food Network in whatever ways you can.
Thank you. Thanks, guys.
Bye,
See you, Jaspal.
Bye, Jaydeep.
Thank you.
I think we can go back to the presentation.
Yeah. Apologies, Jaspal, for the interruption.
No
Please.
problem at all. No problem.
Yeah. Please go ahead.
So, we try to size up the distress that would be temporarily there. I would urge all of you to take it as a reset opportunity. Easier said than done, but I don't think we have any option if we are to remain in this business. So there is a part of very big part of presentation which talks about, this is the chart that is currently on the screen. It is pre-COVID chart. So the industry has always been, some numbers have, I think, because of, so when you get the PDF version, you will see. So industry has always had profitability issues at the store level, right? Always. And post-COVID or during COVID, the situation has worsened. And if I am to create a mirror image of similar thing for, let's say, packaged food industry, it is not very different. Slightly better than the restaurant industry, because here you have massive pressure of lease rentals, whereas the lease rental pressures on packaged food industry are not as high. So this is an interesting chart. Fear of missing out to reality of missing out, more philosophical. So things, earlier during the presentation that we were talking about, arm's reach of desire, shaking hands, hugs and kisses, etc., have suddenly become out of reach, right? Similarly, you want to eat food, but you have question marks around various aspects of food, right from the quality of food to hygiene to who's delivering, how contactless is contactless, right? So this is the reality of missing out. So today, if you are kind of retooling your businesses, reassessing your priorities, most of what we took for granted is kind of hitting us back in terms of how to kind of have re-access to such basic pleasures of life. Philosophical chart. This was actually, the term was coined by a very good Bloomberg writer, So credit to that lady. Fear of missing out, as we all know, was mainly millennial led. 2010 to 2020, long weekend travel, experimentation, go try out new food, new restaurant, etc., etc. Multiplexes, uh, festivals away from home. So unfortunately, millennial class, in one of the charts we have calculated the degree of income erosion, right? So after taking care of essentials, which is basically roti, kapda, makan, health, our monthly health expenses, including insurance premium, etc., right? Then transportation, telecommunication, Wi-Fi, these are all now essential expenses. So whatever we are left with is called discretionary income. So unfortunately, the millennial, set of consumers, their discretionary income is down by 42%, as the pandemic is kind of having its impact on incomes, job cuts, salary compression, etc. So it will further go down, but I guess after September, October, we'll start seeing some level of bounce back, and bounce back would become more pronounced come March, April next year, right? And that's the time when uh, aspects like so I'm not expert here. I also rely a lot on experts from WHO and other clinical minds. The previous slide, just go to the previous slide. So this is the compression of discretionary income. So you have a business which was primarily focused on millennials. You may like to reassess your pricing, because something that was normal to them has suddenly become more expensive. Generation X, which is basically people born between 61 to 1980, their compression is about 21%, and Generation A, which is we fondly call it silent generation, is the least impacted as of now, -5. This doesn't capture wealth, by the way. This is just income, right? So we are now beginning to see yields. The yield is a term given by the economist writer John Parker, because people even at 60, they are active, they are very, very vibrant consumers. I think there were some chat messages appearing in terms of what are the potent opportunities. So two potent opportunities for us to look at are specific age demographic groups. So there is a huge opportunity building up in 0 to 7, 8 years, infant to that kid segment, and geriatric, people who are like 60 plus active, but may have certain medical conditions. So might be looking at food that is not substandard, or food that tastes like medicine. They need nourishment to kind of enjoy life, enjoy food. So that's a huge opportunity. Unfortunately, last 15-20 years, the entire food industry, beverages included, were primarily focused on millennials, people born between 1981 2000. The other assumption, the next slide, please. So, repeatedly I talked about pricing. So pricing is something that we will have to assess very, very carefully, because shrinkage of income would redefine the price elasticities. So there are certain categories we track in the marketplace, wherein cappuccino, which is currently, and pre-COVID day was, let's say, Starbucks 195 rupees. Suddenly, when you have income compression, etc., it seems as if it's very expensive, right? So be very mindful of your elasticity quotients, those who are in packaged food business or the restaurant business. So McDonald's, to my mind, their aloo tikki burger is a fantastic example of how they've managed pricing and volumes of that. So I have So these numbers are, I think, 96, 97% accurate. The idea is not whether they actually sold 830. So 830 would have been either 850 or definitely not 700. So this is like a ballpark figure. The idea is to tell you that pricing is a science that basically requires uh, touch with the market pulse, the customers you service, right? And it can make a lot of difference in these kind of times. So, as you kind of progress, this would be emailed to you by Sanket. We are also looking at aspects like who in the income bracket looks most stable, right? So the government sector, whether you are a retiree or a serving government official, PSU or central government or state government, you are the most stable. And government in this crisis is unlikely to cut jobs or even cut salaries. Increments might be put on hold, and there are certain cities, and within cities there are certain government clusters. So don't ignore government as your customer, right? When I say government, I don't necessarily mean government department, but the cluster. So definition is changing. So these are stable pockets. They are very measured people. They are not impulsive, because one thing government jobs worldwide teaches you is basically a very orchestrated discipline consumption behavior. So in boom time, we usually ignore such segments, but these are the segments which would be our backbone, right? So millennial definition of millennial might not suffice, right? And if you kind of go forward in this report, you will come across certain charts which we collected through the ethnography route. What is it that people of India are eating, right? And there were some questions popping up, asking stuff like, how can I increase my shelf life, etc. So I would strongly urge you to follow one configuration. There are multiple configurations in terms of which food philosophy you belong to, and I'm not like comparing which one is better or worse, right? So we follow, for example, I personally uh, find very easy to relate to what we call Nova rating, which was kind of researched and launched by a set of doctors in Brazil, and it is slowly becoming a sort of norm for even normal people, because other methodologies are very complex and complicated to understand. They all end of the day converge to the same point of assessing food. So for example, Nova rating has 1, 2, 3, 4. So rating 1 means the the product that you are consuming or producing is either natural or least processed. So now let me further delve into that definition. So what is least processed? Let's say you are eating apple in an orchard, right? You pluck the apple, harvested it from the tree and started eating. So that's the natural this thing. Let's say in a situation B, you got that apple to your room and you put it in the refrigerator. So anything that kind of enhances shelf life is basically an indicator of start of processing. So I'm not even remotely saying that processing is bad, but it is very important to understand which market segment you are trying to target. From distribution perspective, do you have products which can kind of stand 5 days, 7 day shelf life? Market might become more demanding of fresh food, etc. So have a philosophy and stick to that. In general, Nova 1, Nova 2, Nova 3 would continue to do well. In fact, Nova 3 compared to fresh food would be the significant gainer in this crisis. Nova 4 is something that would come under pressure worldwide, including India. So just in layman's knowledge, Nova 4 is a food where when you look at the finished product, you don't know what all ingredients have gone into that, right? There could be enhancers, there could be stabilizers, there could be certain ingredients, cooking methodology. So people in general would kind of move away from that category. Nova 1, Nova 2 are very difficult to kind of manage. They are not practical for a country of our size, at least. Rural folks can do it. That's why rural India eats far healthier than urban India. And if you see sub-Saharan dietary habits, they are the best dietary habits. You can catch hold of any UN report. So very low per capita income countries eat much healthier than the so-called developed countries. And in the end, we have touched upon two parts. One is the homeostatic part. Why do we eat? This is something that we need to understand again. We learned it, but most of the world's food and brands were targeted, the pleasure front, social front, pleasure front, appearance front, right? So homeostatic is basically a very core driver of food. When are you eating food? The natural answer is hungry. When was the last time when you were actually hungry, right? So we are somehow started following circadian sort of clocks. So 1:30 it's lunchtime. So I may not be, hungry. So as a result of which we don't enjoy food, and the way we consume food, etc. Also is a big question mark. We are chatting, we are on screen, etc. So then comes hedonic part. So you would see that, in this lockdown, a lot of people discovered the homeostatic pleasures of food, right? Luckily, the younger age groups, they experience homeostatic pleasures more than the older age groups because they go to schools. Most schools in India are not air conditioned. They have their PT games classes. They run, they catch their buses, they walk to school. They do a lot of activity. As a result of which, their whole thing is very naturally tuned. Now, what is the hedonic part? And that's the part I was talking about in the context of Jaydeep talking about Navratra. Hedonic, broadly speaking, has three categories: rituals, right, cultural, and religious. What is ritual? Ritual is something that we use as a matter of habit, right? So if like I'm from Punjab, so my breakfast without paranthas is incomplete. Whether paranthas are good or bad for me, that's not the question. We are purely talking about what I wish to eat, what I want to eat, or what I have been eating, right? Cultural is when you have certain food associations. For example, someone watching IPL match and having beer and some kebabs. So beer and this thing becomes a sort of cultural match. Religious is basically some festivals call for certain products, right? Like firni with Eid or lamb with Eid, right? Makki ki roti during Baisakhi period. So Navratra, abstinence food. So these are the opportunities which are going to shine through this pandemic. Again, if you look at the weight, bulk of the business would come from rituals. But how do you now, somebody asked the question, when would the market open up? Market is going to take some time to open up, right? So we will have to find out the right ways of assembling food, delivering food. So enough and more has already been said about it. I think the next test would be how well we execute in our respective business areas. Cultural is an interesting opportunity. We will have to think through in advance all the cultural things that we can kind of first understand and then carve out solutions around it. Religious one is a very simpler to understand, but unfortunately, in our zeal to glorify festivals on Western lines, we moved away from traditions. So we'll see traditions slowly coming back to our plates, right? So the lamb with the Eid, right? Makki ki roti during Baisakhi period. So Navratra, abstinence food. So these are the opportunities which are going to shine through this pandemic. Again, if you look at the weight, bulk of the business would come from rituals. But how do you now, somebody asked the question, when would the market open up? Market is going to take some time to open up, right? So we will have to find out the right ways of assembling food, delivering food. So enough and more has already been said about it. I think the next test would be how well we execute in our respective business areas. Cultural is an interesting opportunity. We will have to think through in advance all the cultural things that we can kind of first understand and then carve out solutions around it. Religious one is a very simpler to understand, but unfortunately, in our zeal to glorify festivals on Western lines, we moved away from traditions. So we'll see traditions slowly uh, coming back to our plates, right? So the ancestry gap that we've had over the past 15, 20 years, wherein the recipes from grandmothers did get passed on to our mothers, but the process of knowledge transfer or the culture transfer from our mothers to our generation, at least, got little fractured, right? So that would get addressed in this whole pandemic. So I would urge all of us to kind of look at these. These are real opportunities, fantastic opportunities. You can do it yourself assessment. How robust is your business, right? Because if you are not meeting three of these criteria, chances are that you would struggle. So that in essence is the gist of what we put together for our community. Happy to share it with all of you. Thank you very much for your time.
So, sir, I think I was mentioning to Naveen the other day that Jaspal is an encyclopedia of food, and I think today everybody who has attended this webinar is going to accept, agree with whatever I told Naveen the other day. It was a wonderful session with you, sir.
Last point, please do read about bioactives. One of the questions that kind of keeps coming up is why Indian food is not so popular outside, because we haven't presented the scientific principles behind Indian food.
Right.
And Indian food is full of science, right from Ayurveda. Even if you start applying modern science to the food, you would uncover a lot of scientific sort of principles backing our food. The aspect of eating seasonal. आपको हिचकी आया तो आपको मिश्री दी गई. So we are yet to reach that stage. But don't be surprised if that mishri has some bioactive, right? So we have it in our culture, in our ancestry. Unfortunately, it all got lost. People would kind of uncover it. They don't need TagTaste, they don't need the rebel foods, or everybody would kind of contribute. So as a society, we would reclaim what was always ours. So please do read that section on genetics. And we are not at all talking about individual genetics. We are talking about common genetics, right? Wherein you don't need to get your DNA test done to be able to find out which food is good for you, which is not good for you. That is advanced version. We don't even have to get there. Even if we just understand our common genetics and food or beverages that appeal to that genetic pool, you are like 80% done with your health and wellness issues.
For sure. So, Naveen, I think you would want to take over.
Yeah, so thank you all for joining in today's session. Thanks, Sanket, for hosting it. And Jaspal, you are become our oracle. You have become the Yoda of...
not like that.
So, Master Yoda, we would love to do a AMA session, Ask Me Anything session with you in the future, where I think a lot of people have a lot of questions on the sectors that they are working in and opportunities going forward. So let's look at a date in 2 weeks from now and do one session over there. And also, Jaspal, thank you and thank your team for putting all of this together. I know there are a lot of people working with you tirelessly to bring this to us. And folks, thank you all. And please do keep writing to us. Stay safe. And we look forward to you attending the next session. And folks, as I always say, things are looking up. We started these webinar sessions 7 weeks ago. But I think we have come through the whole point of being shocked, in distress to now I think everybody's thinking of the positives and the new economy going forward. So thanks again. Thank you all.
Just to add to your point, Naveen, so the report which Jaspal has launched, we'll anyways send you an email of that, and also you can download the tag. You can download the report from the app as well, and also Jaspal and his team have been very kind enough to forge an alliance with TiE Mumbai and TiE Food Network, and we will soon be sending out the membership forms for TiE Food Network. I would request all of you attendees to take advantage of the facilities that TagTaste provides. I mean, if Jaspal could give you so much information in 1 hour, just imagine what his company could give you as you work with them. With that, thank you so much, Jaspal, for your time, and thank you so much for supporting all of us food entrepreneurs and the community and helping TiE foster entrepreneurship. Thank you so much.
Our sole honor, Sanket. Keep doing the good job that you are doing. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you both.
Thank you.